One of the most fascinating things about living today is that it's laying bare how people think. More than ever, it's becoming clear that there are roughly two groups. These two groups have always existed, but the current state of the world is making it more and more obvious just how different these two groups are. The first group consists of people who generally believe what they're told, and they want to believe what they're told. They live in a world where the state is the highest form of authority and should be trusted. They believe that elections are a fair reflection of the will of the people. They believe that politicians are generally there to help us and that we should follow them because we need leaders to run society efficiently. They put scientists, academics, and doctors on a pedestal because they are objective and should be trusted without question. This first group has been told their whole lives that if they just follow the rules, everything will be fine. In short, these people want to be led. The second group, by contrast, consists of people who don't necessarily believe what they're told. They understand that human beings are complex and don't always tell the truth, that some people have ulterior motives. To the second group, trust must be earned. They can be very skeptical. They will listen to a sales pitch but then go do their own research. They like to verify things for themselves. Above all, they value personal freedom, the freedom to speak, the freedom to run their own lives the way they see fit, and the freedom to go about their business unhindered. They believe people should live and let live, that we should all be free to conduct our lives in peace. The first group genuinely believes that the second group is a bunch of conspiracy nuts. They've been told that the second group is obtuse, uneducated, self-centered, and paranoid. The second group, on the other hand, thinks that the first group is a bunch of willfully ignorant sheep who blindly choose to bury their heads in the sand, accept everything they're told, and exhibit a frustrating inability to wake up and face reality. The fascinating thing is that these two groups might as well be living on different planets. Their thinking is utterly alien to the other. Their perception of reality is so different that when they look at the same issue, their interpretations and conclusions are dramatically divergent. When it comes to the issue of vaccines, the normal group and the awake group couldn't be further apart. While the normals believe that current rules are the way they are because governments and corporations are just trying to make the world a safer place, we, the awake, understand the following 5 points. 1. Awake people know that the political establishment has become completely corrupt. It's impossible to reach a high level of political office without being compromised in some way, such as being bought off, blackmailed, indebted, threatened, or initiated. Therefore, there can never be a political solution to any of our problems. Politicians will always serve their masters, never the people.
We're all in this together.
So get vaccinated.
I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms. But I happen to take the vaccine.
I think we need to have a global network of surveillance.
It's clear that they let us off the hook for a very good reason, because we paid them $600 million.
2. Awake people know that vaccine passports have been planned for many years, and although health is the excuse to implement them, they have nothing to do with health. Their purpose is to get people to accept being tied to a digital identity, where citizens can be rewarded, punished, manipulated, traced, and tracked, all leading ultimately to a dominant surveillance state.
The ability for those people to go there and come back and move around. So eventually there will be sort of this digital immunity proof that will help facilitate the global reopening up.
And now what is happening under the guise of COVID-19 is the bankers have decided they no longer want to share power with the electorate or the people's representatives. The central banks have decided essentially to take over. And the ultimate sort of completion of this will be when they introduce digital currencies controlled and operated by the central bank. Why is that important? Because they won't be currencies, Del. They will be a financial control system. To implement that system, they need the vaccine passports. And the goal of the vaccine passports have nothing to do with health. They have to do with implementing a new digital financial transaction system, which is in essence complete control.
3. Awake people know that selling vaccines is incredibly profitable. The Center for Disease Control is a private company owned primarily by big pharmaceutical companies. It makes its immense profits in the many billions of dollars by selling vaccines. The Awake also know that the World Health Organization is funded mostly by Big Pharma to help them create markets around the world. If that wasn't bad enough, Big Pharma is the only industry in the world powerful enough to make governments pass legislation to exempt vaccine makers from any liability for damages they may cause.
You've invested $10 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades, and you figured out the return on investment for that, and it kind of stunned me. Can you walk us through the math?
We see a phenomenal track record, but we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
I think the numbers that you ran through were if you had put that money into an S&P 500 and reinvested the dividends, you'd come up with something like $17 billion, but you think it's $200 billion.
Here, yeah.
CDC is actually a vaccine company. CDC has a total budget of about $11 billion a year. So you have the regulatory agency actually making money by mandating this vaccine to people and then collecting money on it and ignoring the health effects when people are injured. And these are zero liability products. WHO is just a sock puppet for the pharmaceutical industry.
We've reached an agreement with Pfizer for 35 million booster doses for next year and 30 million in the year after. And the work doesn't end there either. We're on ongoing discussions with other vaccine manufacturers about their plans for booster shots, too.
4. Awake people know that they should be very, very wary about what is being pushed on them. These big pharmaceutical companies have a terrible track record. They have wreaked havoc all over the world for many years, have been under criminal investigation countless times, and quietly settled for billions of dollars many, many times.
There's the Gates-founded and funded meningitis vaccine project, which led to the creation and testing of MenAfriVac, a 50-cent per dose immunization against meningococcal meningitis. The test led to reports of between 40 and 500 children suffering seizures and convulsions and eventually becoming paralyzed. There's the 2017 confirmation that the Gates-supported oral polio vaccine was actually responsible for the majority of new polio cases, and the 2018 follow-up showing that 80% of polio cases are now vaccine-derived. There's the 2018 paper in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health concluding that over 490,000 people in India developed paralysis as a result of the oral polio vaccine between 2000 and 2017.
5. Awake people know that there could be long-term health consequences for taking the mRNA vaccines. I'm not going to speculate on what those consequences might be. It's still too early to say conclusively. Having said this, however, it does appear that certain disconcerting patterns are beginning to emerge. The mainstream media is clearly trying to cover this up. All I'm going to say right now is that when power-hungry people are extremely motivated to have us do something, is it rational to be on our guard?
Starting Monday, Americans who have received a COVID-19 shot can claim a free donut every day for the rest of the year.
Did you say free fries when you get vaccinated? You're saying I could get this? If this is appealing to you, just think of this when you think of vaccination. Vaccination.
Free beer and baseball tickets are up for grabs as the White House doubles down on its efforts to get more Americans vaccinated.
That's right. Get a shot and have a beer.
This gave them a chance to still feed outside while being in close proximity to the trap in order to begin trusting the enclosure. Watch the reaction of the adult sow who is the mother of the 7 pigs. She is the matriarch of this sounder and extremely cautious of the situation. It is important to slowly condition this many adults to the enclosure over several days. Trappers must be patient to this conditioning process.
What more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see?
Nothing negative had happened during 2 visits, and they were beginning to trust the enclosure. This step should create a domino effect of follow the leader on the 3rd visit. Video intel suggested the hogs were starting to commit. If so, we would capture them on day 3. If not, we could wait until day 4.
But our patience is wearing thin.
The most intelligent adult sows were last to commit. Here, the matriarch is studying the situation. She does not enter the gate threshold and walked around to the back of the trap. We manually triggered the gate closed with the on-site remote.
Unfortunately, some decisions can't be undone. The 2 groups, the normals and the awake, view the world in an entirely different way. A few years ago, this would have been perfectly fine. In the past, we could cut the normal, asleep people some slack. After all, they should be allowed to live their lives any way they want. The problem now, however, is that if they refuse even to understand that they're in danger, they will continue in their state of slumber and apathy and let very bad people have their way with all of us. Awake people understand that if more people would wake up and acknowledge what is really happening, the powers that be would have no chance of manipulating us. This is where it's so frustrating. By choosing to be blind and bury their heads in the sand, the normals are doing their part in taking us down a road that is already leading to a very dark place. Although it's hard to wake the normals up, we have to keep trying. To my brothers and sisters out there, there's one thing that all psychologists know. How do you deal with psychopaths? The answer is you don't. You can't reason with them, you can't bargain with them, and you can't appease them. If you try to deal with them in any way, they will keep using you until you are ruined. This is their nature. The only thing that can work is to stand up to them and to continue speaking the truth. The next number of months is going to be very difficult. Right now, the powers that be are controlling the narrative, but that window is shrinking. That's why they are so desperate to get us all vaxxed in such a hurry. When their lives become more disrupted, some normal people will start to wake up, and the narrative will shift. You're going to be very glad that you stuck to your principles and didn't give in to their propaganda and pressure tactics. Stay awake, everyone, and stay strong. Redouble your resolve. Know that you're on the right side of history.